Hi everybody and welcome to our Introduction to Dreamweaver class. We're going to wait just about one more minute and give a few other people a chance to get into the classroom before we begin. And then we'll get started with our class. So I'll see you in about 1 minute to start. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to our Introduction to Dreamweaver class. And I'm really excited to be presenting this material to you. And I'm glad that you took the opportunity to participate in our class today. And this Introduction to Dreamweaver class is going to be very practical. And I'm assuming everybody here at this point has looked at the course outline before they signed up for the class, so you know the basic topics that we're going to go through, and that you've received the handouts for this class. If not, go ahead and send us an email and we'll be sure to send you the handouts for the class because they're very useful in going through the material. Basically, what we're going to do in this class, the material is divided into three sections. In the first section of the class, we're going to go ahead and learn about the basic Dreamweaver window, how to work with the interface, what different tools are available to us, what the different regions are called on the screen, and how to basically function in the Dreamweaver window. We're also going to talk about how to define websites inside of Dreamweaver, and how to use Dreamweaver to manage the different files and resources that go to building up a website. Then we're going to go ahead and give a brief introduction to the two basic languages of the web, HTML and CSS. And while there are certainly other languages that are out there that are used in building websites, such as PHP and XML and JavaScript, everything always comes back to HTML and CSS. So I'm going to provide a brief overview of those two languages. Um, this is by no means a complete introduction to HTML and CSS, and you can go to our website at timothytraining.net and check out some of the other classes and tutorials that we have on HTML and CSS. But this will give you a good firm foundation of what you need to know to begin creating websites with these two languages. But again, you should assume that this is just an introduction to those two languages. And then the third part of this class is where we sort of tie everything together. And again, I mentioned that this is designed to be a very practical course. I want everybody at the end of our class to come out of it having learned a very practical skill that they can actually apply and use. So in that third section, we're going to actually build a website. It's going to be a simple website, but it's going to be, again, a very functional, practical website that looks professional, that's easy to use and maintain, and something that if you want to, you can actually use for a project that you're working on. So again, um, the class project website that we're going to be working with, if you adapt that for a project that you're working on, that's perfectly fine. And that's probably one of the questions that I get most commonly is, can we actually use this website for our business or for our organization? And the answer is definitely yes. And let me go ahead and before we get started, show you, in case you haven't already seen it, this is going to be the basic template that we create. And again, the goal of this template um, is to be a very practical tool that you can adapt and modify to a variety of different needs. And you can see here we're working with a fairly standard layout. We've got our top region here with our navigation links, a banner, below that a larger content area along with a sidebar, and then finally a footer. There's nothing fancy about this layout, but it's a very practical, easy to maintain layout. It's also going to be a very mobile friendly layout. Now you may have heard the term responsive, and this template could very easily be made responsive, but there is a difference between mobile friendly and responsive, and that's a big debate right now in the web design community. But you could take this in the responsive route eventually if you got to that place. What I mean when I say mobile friendly, this design, because it is created using very straightforward methods and techniques, is going to be able to be viewed um, on any smartphone or tablet device or any type of mobile device that you might want to look at it on. So it doesn't have the responsive features, but it can definitely be viewed on different mobile devices. And here is an example of a website that was created using this template that we're going to actually build in class. And after we're through building this template, we're actually going to modify it to look like this website. And again, this is a fictitious website, but you can see the similarities between this layout here and this website here. All that we've basically done is added our own text and images. We've added our own links here. Instead of it saying sample page, it now says menu, wine, entertainment, so on and so forth. We changed our fonts, our colors. So with some fairly straightforward modifications, this very practical web template has been transformed into a professional looking website that could be used for a business or organization or for whatever purpose you wanted to put to it. And again, if you decide to use this template for a project that you're working on, that's great. Nothing would make me happier than to see the results of what you learn in today's class. So that's basically what we're going to be doing in today's class. You can go back and watch the recordings of today's class at any time you want. And we'll be sending everybody a link to those recordings. So you can review this material as much as you need to and as often as you need to achieve your learning goals. And what a lot of people do after the class is they actually start working on their project and they go back to the videos and they go step by step to building their own website. So that's another advantage of this class. And again, this class prepares you for the Dreamweaver Intermediate class that we have or the Dreamweaver project classes that we offer. It's designed to be a very practical class. And we're also going to break about every hour or so at a logical point in the material to give you a chance to get up and get a drink or whatever you need to do. So we will be taking breaks every so often. So let's go ahead and dive in and start learning about how to use Dreamweaver. You can see here I have the main Dreamweaver CC window open at this time. And if you haven't modified the layout of your Dreamweaver window. This is going to be the way Dreamweaver CC looks when you first start it up. Now, there are several different areas that we're going to be working a lot in Dreamweaver. Obviously, we have our menus up here at the top that have all of our different commands inside of them. And that's going to be the same as almost every single application that you work in. And then you have below your menus this large sort of open area. It has this new and open screen in the middle of it right now, but you have this large open area. And that's going to be your workspace. That's going to be where the different files and pages that you're editing will appear. Below that, you have the Properties panel, and below to the right of that, you have the main Dreamweaver panels. So we have our regular Dreamweaver panels over here to the right, and then we have our Properties panel over here at the bottom. And very frequently in this class, I'm going to say, I'm going to go to the Site menu, or I'm going to go to the Modify menu. Whenever I say that, I'm talking about going to these menu items up here. But if I ever say, look at your panels, or look at the Dreamweaver panels, I'm talking about these panels over here. These panels over here. If I ever say, look at the Dreamweaver Properties panel, that's talking about this area down here at the bottom. And right now it's empty because we don't have any pages open or any files open. But eventually you'll see a number of settings appear down here at the bottom. So we have our normal Dreamweaver panels over here to the right, our properties panels down, our property panel down here at the bottom. Now, let's talk a little bit about the way these panels work, because that's going to be really important for you now and in other classes. The first thing you should know is that the different areas within your panels can be expanded or collapsed. And the Properties panel down here is going to be a good example of that. If I double click on the word Properties, I want you to notice how that collapses, therefore giving me more space in my work area here. If I wanted to expand again, I just simply double click on the word Properties and that comes back up. The same thing is true here in our regular panels to the right. Now, I want you to notice that these panels have tabs, just like the Properties panel does, but there are multiple tabs, and there are actually two sections in our right-hand section over here. We've got our Insert and Files panel up here at the top, and you'll see how as I click on those different tabs, how it switches back and forth between them. And then the second section down here in the Properties panel has two areas, CSS Designer and CSS Transforms. And as I click on those different tabs, you'll see I go to a different set of properties. Now, just like we were able to expand and collapse the Properties panel over here, you can expand and collapse these panels. If I double click on the word Files, you can see how that collapsed and CSS Designer and Transforms was pulled up. If I double click on it again, it opens. If I double click on CSS Designer, you'll see how that collapses, and it actually came down here to the bottom. And if I double clicked on Files at this point, all of them would collapse. So you can expand and collapse these different panels to accomplish what you want to accomplish. The major panel that we're going to be working with in this class is going to be the Files panel right here. Now, if I come to the Window menu, you're going to also notice that these windows are listed here on this menu. And if I was to come to Files, you'll see there's a check mark next to that indicating that it is visible. But if I was to click that, you'll see how it collapses. If I was to come back here and click on Files, it'll expand that. So a few different ways that you can get to these different panel areas. Most of the time for this class, we're going to be working in the Files panel right over here. Now, I also want to point you to right up here at the top, at this gray bar, not on the tab line, but on the bar above that. You're going to see there's a double arrows right here. And when I hover over that, it actually says collapse or to expand. And if I click that, you're going to see how those panels expand and collapse. I can actually make this area wider or narrower depending on what my needs are, and as well as expand and collapse this. Now, when you collapse this panel, you still have access to all the tabs and all the panels that you were working with before. It's just narrower, so now again you have more room to work. And when you first start using Dreamweaver, that may not seem like a terribly important issue, but as you start working more with Dreamweaver, every bit of extra space that you can get to work with um, is going to be valuable to you. So very often you'll see people working in Dreamweaver like this, where they've collapsed the properties panel as well as their standard panels over here. And again, you still have access to everything that you had access to before. It's just in a different way. There's Insert, Files, CSS Designer, and CSS Transforms. And again, you can see that's identical to the different tabs that I have access to here. When you click on these different tab headings, when the panels are expanded, they become these flyout menus. And you can see, I can now see everything in my Files area, my Insert area, CSS Designer, so on and so forth. And you can also expand how much those different tabs take up. For instance, I can make the Files panel here a little bit larger. Doesn't affect the CSS Designer or Transforms panel, just affects that one and any items that are grouped with it. If I want to collapse that panel again so I can see my work area, I just click on Files again. Now, how you arrange your window and how you work with your different items is entirely up to you. There is no benefit absolutely one way or the other. It's whatever you're most comfortable with. So whereas I like keeping everything collapsed like this, if you happen to like keeping your Files panel open so you can always see what you're working with over here, there's nothing at all wrong with doing that. But knowing that you can manage these windows in these ways is important. If for no other reason, because occasionally you may accidentally click one of these buttons and not realize how to get a particular panel or region back on the screen. And for right now, I'm basically going to go ahead and just leave my panels alone like this with the properties area and the files panel open. Later on, I'm going to collapse those and you'll see practically how that can make a difference in your design. So that's your main Dreamweaver window. Now, right now, I don't have any websites defined inside of Dreamweaver. And you can see that here in the Files panel, I'm just looking at my desktop. And if I click the drop down arrow here, I can see the different drives that I have access to, but there are no websites that have been defined. To do that, I'm going to go to my Site menu right here and select New Site. So whenever you're starting a new website, you're always going to come here to Site and New Site. And it's going to bring you to this Definitions dialog box. Now, over here to the left, you're going to see there are different panels available to you that have different sets of settings. Right now, we're just going to be on the site panel. Later on, we're going to come back and we're going to define a server so that we can actually publish our work. But to define a site inside of Dreamweaver, all you have to do is give that site a name and tell Dreamweaver what folder on your computer that website is located in. So I'm going to go ahead here and call this sample website 1. And then down here where it says local site folder, that's the folder on your computer that's going to contain all of the resources that go to building this website. You can see the path to that website. To choose a folder that you want to place the site in, you just click this little yellow folder icon here, and an open dialog box is going to come up. And just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to go ahead and go to my desktop, and I'm going to create a new folder on my desktop to hold this website. And again, just like you could name the folder anything, the website anything you want, you can name the folder that holds the website anything you want as well. But I find it makes the most sense to name the local root folder, the folder that's going to hold the website, the same as whatever name you gave the website right here. So if this is sample website 1, you're going to want to name your website sample website. Whoops, I just call it sample site. So we'll go ahead and name that website sample website 1. And then I have to make sure that I double click on this folder. You need to actually be inside of the folder, not just have it highlighted. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on that folder. And so the name of your website should be up here at the top. And we're going to go ahead and select that folder. And again, you should see the path here. And I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And I now have sample website 1 defined inside of Dreamweaver. There's nothing inside of sample website 1, but I actually have the website defined in Dreamweaver, so I can now begin to create pages and add images and do everything I want with my site. You can use Dreamweaver to manage as many websites as you want. And as a matter of fact, one of the main selling points, or one of the main reasons why a lot of people like using Dreamweaver, is its file or website management tools. And if I wanted to create a second website, I could just click Site and select New Site. And I'm going to go ahead and call this Sample Website 2. And again, click this little yellow folder icon right here. Go to my desktop. I'm going to create a new folder and call it Sample Website 2. And again, I double click on it to go inside of it and then hit Select Folder. You should see the name of your folder in the path right here, and then save. So now I have 2 websites defined inside of Dreamweaver that I can work on. So if you're just working on, let's say you just have a website for your business, you may only define one website inside of Dreamweaver, and that's it. If this is something you're considering doing as a career or a hobby, or you have multiple websites that you want to manage, Dreamweaver will help you do that as well. If I come back here to the site menu, you're going to also notice that I have an option here for Manage Sites. And when I select that, it's going to show me all the different websites that are inside of Dreamweaver, or defined inside of Dreamweaver right now. Sample website 1, sample website 2 here. If you want to remove a website, all you've got to do is click on that and then click the minus sign right here. If you want to edit some of the properties about that website, for instance, the name, or change its folder, you'd click on it and click this little pencil icon here, and that brings you back into this site setup dialog box. It would allow you to make these changes. Now, one very important thing to note is removing a site from Dreamweaver does not remove it from your computer. If I click on sample website 2 and click the minus sign here, it's going to actually say you cannot undo this action. Delete the selected sites. In this case, we only have one site selected. And I'm going to go ahead and click yes. You'll see it's deleted that site from Dreamweaver. I'll click done here. But if I was to look on my website, or I'm sorry, if I was to look on my computer, you're going to see that folder is still there. So it just removed it from Dreamweaver. It didn't actually delete the folder. So anything that was inside of that folder is still safe. Now, if you have an existing website on your computer somewhere that you want to begin editing with Dreamweaver, if you've already created something either in another program, or if it's a website that somebody else built and you want to begin working with it in Dreamweaver, you go through the exact same process. Even though it's not a new site, we're going to go to the Site menu and select New Site. And we can call this whatever we want. For instance, I can call this Xander Cafe. And when I come over here to the Browse button and look on my desktop, all I would have to do is go find the existing websites folder, select it, and then save it, and now that site is available to me inside of Dreamweaver. And I actually did Xander Cafe and said that it was in sample website too, but you sort of get the idea there. As we work on different sites inside of this class, you're going to see how that works. The important thing is to remember that when you're in managed sites, simply clicking on this site and selecting the minus sign does not actually delete any folders or files. It just removes the site from Dreamweaver so that you don't have a lot of clutter or a lot of old sites that are in here. And when I hit done, you can see I now have just that one site available to me in Dreamweaver. And by the way, there's usually more than one way to get somewhere inside of Dreamweaver. Previously, I went to Site and Manage Sites to get to this dialog box, but I can also click this drop down arrow here and you'll see Manage Sites is right there. If I wanted to edit the properties, let's say change the name of this from sample website 1 to my project website, before we could go into Manage Sites, click the site, and click this little pencil icon right here, and it brings me into this dialog box that would allow me to edit anything about this site. But let me go ahead and cancel out of that. If you actually double click right here, you'll see it brings you to that location inside of Dreamweaver. So that's a very handy shortcut to get to your site setup definition. And again, much of this is going to become a lot more clear as we actually begin working with different websites. So if some of this is a little bit confusing at this point, don't worry. When you actually see the practical example of what we're doing, when we tie all this together, I promise you that this will make sense. So I'm going to go ahead and click cancel here, and now I'm back to my main Dreamweaver window. Now, the first thing that you really need to think about when you're planning your website is you need to think about how you're going to organize your different files inside of Dreamweaver. And just like on your computer, you organize different files into folders, you do the exact same thing with a website. You're going to manage and organize your files inside of your website with folders as well. To create a folder inside of Dreamweaver is very simple. We simply come to our Files panel, and you can see here it says Local Files, and then it has just Site Dash Sample and then the three dots because this column isn't very wide, but you can see how I can expand and collapse that there. But right down here, if I right click and select New Folder, a lot of people right click up here, and that actually won't work. You need to be down here. If I right click and select New Folder, you can see it created a new empty untitled folder for me. Now there are three folders that every website is always going to need. There are three folders inside of this root folder that you're always going to create in any website project. The first you're going to call Images. And that's where you're going to put the different photos, graphics, icons, all the different images that you're going to use inside of your website in. The second folder that we're going to always have in our website is going to be called CSS. And you'll remember earlier I mentioned CSS is one of the two main languages that we use to build websites. And this CSS folder is going to hold all of your CSS style sheets that you're going to create. Many websites only have one style sheet. Many websites have two or more style sheets associated with them. But in this case, we have a folder to place them all in. And the third folder that you're always going to go ahead and create is going to be a folder, and you're going to call it JS. And just like we have a folder to put our CSS files in, the JS folder is where we're going to put any JavaScript files that we work with in our website in. And there are certainly other folders that you can create inside of Dreamweaver or inside of a Dreamweaver website. You know, if you wanted to create, let's say you have a lot of PDF documents on your site. I could right click up here and select New Folder and create and call it PDF. So you can create as many folders as you want to keep your files organized. And a big key to having a website that's easy to maintain is having your files all nicely organized. I can delete a folder by right clicking on that folder, like let's say PDF in this case, selecting Edit, and you'll see here's Cut, Copy, and also Delete. I'll select Delete here and then click Yes. And that actually will delete the folder that was in that root folder for you. So you're going to want to make sure that you're always certain before you delete a folder in that way. Again, removing a site by clicking on this minus sign right here just removes it from Dreamweaver. But actually deleting a website folder from this here and using the edit delete command will actually delete that folder and anything that you put inside of that folder. Now you can also put folders inside of folders inside of Dreamweaver. And the images folder is a folder that a lot of times you need to subdivide down because you're going to have a lot of images. Your average site has a lot of images inside of it. And keeping track of what all those images are can be really difficult without breaking it down into folders. And I usually create 3 folders to start with inside of my images folder. I create a folder and I call it icons. And that's going to be where all of my website icons go, like my social media icons. And then I'm going to right click up here and create another new folder and call it banner. and that's going to be where any of my banner images go. And then finally, I'll create another folder here, and I'm going to call it BG, and that's where any of my background images goes. So again, don't be afraid to create folders to keep everything organized inside of Dreamweaver. You don't want to go overboard and create folders you don't need, but on the whole, if you have a choice between creating a folder and just having a few files inside of it and keeping yourself more organized, or having just fewer folders, I would always lean towards being more organized. And it will really help you um, maintain your website. So here we've gone ahead and created some folders. And you're also going to notice I've got expand and collapse buttons right here. Whenever I have a folder inside of another folder or anything inside of a folder, I get these plus and minus signs here that allow me to expand and collapse it. I don't have one next to CSS and JS because there's nothing in those two folders right now. But I can collapse that, and again, that gives me more room to see the things that I'm actually working with. Now, in addition to these three basic folders that you're going to go ahead and create inside of Dreamweaver, you're going to always create two files to start. You're always going to create two files to start. One is going to be called main.html. And you create that in exactly the same way. You right-click on a folder. In this case, I'm right-clicking on my root folder, or the topmost folder. And I'm going to right-click there and select New File. And I'm going to call this main.html. Now, your web pages are always going to have the ending dot in either HTML or .htm. Your HTML files are always going to have one of those two extensions. It does not matter which one you use, but you should be consistent in the one you use. That way, when you're typing out links, you won't have to guess whether you used HTML or HTML. So I've created a main.html file, and that's going to be where we build our sample web page that we can build our website pages from. You could call this anything at all, but main.html is the common name for that. And then I want to create a style sheet. And to create a style sheet, I'm going to right-click on my CSS folder and select New File. I'm going to delete the .html there, and I'm going to call this styles.css. Your CSS style sheets will always have the extension .css on them. So whereas main.html can be either main.html or .htm, style sheets always have the ending styles.css. And you'll see how by right-clicking on that folder, instead of on this topmost folder, that file went into that particular folder. And you'll also notice there's an expand and collapse, that plus and minus sign, to the left of the CSS folder because I now have something inside of it. Managing your files inside of Dreamweaver, very, very simple. All you've got to do is drag the files around. For instance, for some reason or another, if I wanted styles.css to be in the JS folder, I don't know any reason why I would want that, but I could just drag it in there and you'll see how, after I click update, it moves that file into that folder. Or I can move it into the top level folder here, my root folder, just like that. Or I can move it back where it belongs into CSS. And notice I'm always just clicking update on that. We're going to talk more about what that update dialog box means later on. But you can very easily drag and drop files. And a lot of times it's really easy to accidentally drag something. You can drag a whole folder. For instance, if I drag JS into images, you'll see it now goes there. But I could drag that back out to the topmost folder, and now it's available for me to work with. You can click this topmost heading here where it says local files, and that will sort your files in alphabetical order by their folders. You could also sort by the date it was last modified, the type of file that it is, or the file size. But probably the most useful is just sorting in alphabetical order, just like that there, by clicking on local files. Now, occasionally, you may not see a file in your folder or in your site that you know should be there. It's either you placed it in there manually, or you you remember creating it, and you think there's Dreamweaver maybe not showing you everything here. And if that's ever the case, you're going to notice I have a little refresh button right here. And it's this button with the circular arrow on it. Clicking on that will tell Dreamweaver, go look at my folders and make sure that you're showing me everything in this website. So if clicking on that refresh button doesn't show you something, chances are that is not actually in your website. And to show you an example of that, I'm going to go ahead and minimize Dreamweaver here. And you'll see now I'm on my desktop right here. And you'll see here's the two folders that we created earlier on my desktop. And if I go ahead and open that up, you can see there are the folders I created along with the main file there. Whether or not the extension is shown depends on your settings on your computer. But let's say I just create another file in here for some reason. I'm just going to create a new file, and let's say it's a text document here, and I'm going to call it sample. And now when I go ahead and go back into Dreamweaver, you're going to see I can't see sample.txt here anywhere in my website. But if I click on the refresh button, there is that file. If I was to delete this file, either by right-clicking on it, selecting Edit and Delete, or by going into the actual folder itself and deleting that file, you're going to see the results here. If you don't see the results, for instance, I know I just deleted that file, again, clicking refresh will update this file list for you. So that refresh button is going to be really important here. And when we begin to publish our website, we're going to learn about some of these other buttons like Get and Put and the Connect button right here. But that's basically the way you'll use this Files panel to create new files and to work with existing files. And it's always best to work in this Dreamweaver Files panel whenever you're moving things around or renaming things, or whenever you're working with any of your website files. A lot of people fall into the mistake of moving their files directly in the folder itself, and you always want to stay away from doing that. And I'll explain why later on, but avoid directly editing your folders and files here, except in very limited circumstances, mainly having to do with images. You always want to go ahead and do all your moving around in this Files panel. And again, probably the case where more often than not you're going to directly add files to a website folder as opposed to working in the Files panel here is when you have a set of images you want to use and you want to copy those over into your website. For example, let's say I had some social media icons that I want to use for this particular project. And let's say there are 10 of them that I want to use. Let me go ahead and minimize Dreamweaver here, and actually I have a folders worth of icons right here, and if I open this up you can see here some simple social media icons, and let's say I want to add all of these images to my folder so that I can use them later on. I can just simply drag that folder into my folder, and now you'll see it's in my folder, and I could drag that up into images and drag it up into icons if I wanted to. Yep, and I actually call that icon instead of icons. There we go, change that. And now when I go back into Dreamweaver and take a look at this after hitting the refresh button, you'll now see social is there, and all of those social media icons are available for me to use. So occasionally you can add files to your website, but anything other than adding images, you really need to do that work inside of Dreamweaver, not directly in the folder. Now, I created one HTML file here and one CSS file. And to open that file, as you probably already suspect, all you have to do is double click on it. And you're going to see that that file appears in my main workspace area. You're also going to notice that there's a tab up here at the top that has the name of the file, as well as a close button right there. So I can double click to open it and close it just by clicking the X there. You're often going to have multiple files open because you're going to be working with them at the same time. And let's say I double click on styles.css here. Now you'll see there's two tabs up here at the top. One for my CSS document and the other for my HTML document. Now, you're going to notice that I have a toolbar that has appeared at the top of my HTML page. That toolbar also appears in the styles.css. But here I want to point out to you 5 very important buttons. They're right here. They're Code View, Split View, Design View, Live View, and Preview View. So these 5 buttons here are the different views that you can work in inside of Dreamweaver. And they each have a very specific purpose. Code View allows you to see the code that goes to building a web page. Design View allows you to see the layout of your page. Now, one very common misconception when working with Dreamweaver is that Design View is a preview window. And it absolutely is not a preview window. Design View is more, it's really a better word for it, I think, would be layout. It's meant to show you the layout of your page. If you want to preview or see the way your website is actually going to look, you're going to use either the live view or your preview tool right here that will actually open your page up in a browser. And we'll be seeing more about the live view and the preview view in a moment. But the 2 view buttons that I want to point out to you that are the most important for what we're going to be doing in this class are going to be the code view and the design view. Now, when I come to my CSS file, since CSS files don't have a layout associated with them, you can see design and split are both grayed out. All I have is code view. So these 3 options here are mainly for HTML files. And again, the main views are code and design. Split just shows you code view in one area and the layout, the design view, in another area. So as you make changes in your code, you can see how those changes are affecting your layout. And here you can already see how expanding and collapsing different panels is going to be very useful for you. First of all, now that we actually have a page open, I want you to notice your properties panel now has some settings in it. We'll be dealing more with that later. But you can see if I collapse these panels, I now have much more room to see my document, especially when I'm working in split view. Now, the layout design view and the code view are showing you the exact same document. It's just showing you a different view of the document. One showing you the exact code, the other is showing you the layout that that code makes. Changes in one will automatically be reflected in the other. For example, if I'm in design view and I type hello, welcome to my website, I've now made some changes. If I go into code view, you can see it's now incorporated those changes into the actual code. If I was to go back into design view, hit enter and type another line, I can see how in code view how that has been placed into this. If I was to delete something from code view, for example, delete this from here, and then look in design view, you'll see again the changes are reflected. If I'm in split view, you'll actually see those changes occurring live. I'm going to click at the end of welcome to my website and notice that my cursor is right here. And now I'm going to hit enter, and you can see that change that affected my code. And I'm going to type another line right here, and you can see that change was reflected. If I was to come into code view and actually type some code in here, and again we're going to see more about the basics of HTML in a little bit, type final line here, you're going to see that when I click back over in my design view, that comes up. But you have to actually click over here if you make a change in your design view. So really easy to use these different code buttons up here. And again, we're going to be switching back and forth a lot between code and design in this window. And we'll have occasion to use split view as well as a time that we're going to go ahead and see the live and the preview view options right here. Now, one final thing before we take a break and continue on into our next section is I want you to notice that there's an asterisk to the right of main.html here. And what that basically means is that there are unsaved changes in this document. If I was to go to File and Save, notice you also have a Save All command here, which is really, really useful. But if I hit Save right here, you're going to see that asterisk disappears. If I was to highlight this and delete it, well, that's an unsaved change, and the asterisk is now back. If you had made any changes in other documents, like I just hit the space bar a few times there, you'll see I now have multiple asterisks next to the file names, and now I can go to the file menu and select Save All, and it automatically saves all of my documents for me. That Save All command is really, really useful to you. So that's the basics of the Dreamweaver window and the different areas that you can work with inside of Dreamweaver. We're going to go ahead and take a break for 10 minutes, and when we come back, we're going to go ahead and start an overview of what HTML and CSS is and how to use it to build different web pages. So I will see you in 10 minutes.